I know it sounds like a cliche where a lot of people will tell you that the last born was a surprise, but in our case, it was really a surprise again
Mm.
because of Kathy's condition, that she wouldn't be able to conceive naturally.
Wow.
But yeah,
Hello and welcome to the Dad Dialogue podcast. I am your host, Laurence. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to remind you of ways you can interact with the show. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, go over to daddialogue.co.uk and you can register your interest there. Also, you can follow us on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, all those sort of social media places. If you know anyone that would appreciate hearing a podcast like this, please do share it with them. It really helps us out. Today's guest is Mark. Mark is a friend that I've had for a short time here in the Netherlands. We moved here at similar times with our families. So in today's episode, we talk a little bit about moving internationally with a family, making that decision for your children. And Mark opens up about what it means to make that decision for the future of your children and how difficult it can be to leave family behind sometimes. We talk a little bit about faith, how that impacts our lives as parents, how that allows us to be the best parents we can be. And Mark also talks a little bit about the differences in raising a girl and raising a boy with a rather large age gap. So I really appreciate Mark coming on the podcast and joining us today. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into the conversation. So you've got two kids, you've got a boy and a girl. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found the main differences are from being a dad to a girl and then a boy?
one thing that is extremely different is definitely the amount of energy slash the busyness between a girl and a boy. Yeah, I think people um, warned me about boys being so busy, but yeah, I don't think you can ever be too prepared, even if people warn you enough. So that's definitely one thing that I've noticed. And another friend of mine used to say, the nice thing about having girls is that girls are very they're very expressive in a sense that they will show you how much they love you by kissing you, hugging you all the time. But yeah, I guess uh, it almost looks to me like it's the opposite here.
Oh,
So
really?
Aaron is a very yeah yeah. So he looks like the emotional type, where Taylor is not so expressive. Yeah,
Okay. That's interesting.
yeah.
So how was Taylor kind of as a toddler, as when she was kind of Aaron's age? Like you say, he's maybe a bit busier than she was.
Yeah.
What's the comparison like at that age?
Well, comparison-wise, I would say development-wise, starting off with the development, Taylor was definitely quicker with a whole lot of things. So she started talking at a very early age. So that is the first and the most obvious thing,
Mm.
in terms of development. So Taylor could like speak before she could start walking. So before she turned one, she could already talk. So
Wow.
that's like the biggest and the most obvious thing for us. But yeah, like I said as well, when it comes to Taylor was also a colic baby. So in that sense, they are also different.
Mm.
So yeah, with colic babies, they cry nonstop. But Aaron, on the other hand, he's like the opposite in that sense as well. So there's definitely, yeah, those are the couple of differences. And I think expressing themselves, both of them are actually the same, in terms of this is not a good character trait, and they got it from me, maybe, where they both very impatient. So yeah, if they can't get something right, even when they play, they like literally throw the toys in a corner. So both of them are the same in that sense. Yeah.
Mm.
So those are just some of the small differences. And like I said, in terms of being emotional and or showing emotion, Aaron is, I think, a bit more emotional, shows more emotion
Mm.
than Taylor. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I just want to pick up what you said about the impatience. I think we as
Yeah,
parents always see the kids with impatience. I think there's nothing like seeing something like that happen with kids to kind of like reflect back on yourself as a parent and go,
yeah,
oh, is this something coming from me? I mean, I know for a fact for me, like you just the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? The things can mount and mount and mount, and suddenly
yeah,
you just
yeah,
lose that patience. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
why do you think they've picked that up from you versus just it's something developing them as their children?
Why do I think that's from me? Because yeah, I think Kathy is much more patient. Yeah, between Kathy and I, there's also a whole lot of differences. Kathy is extremely patient to a point where I actually get impatient on her behalf. Where I tell her, Kathy, but you're supposed to like not be that patient, when it comes to certain things. So I can definitely see that they get it from me, but that was also passed over to me by my father. He was the
Mm,
same, and I guess a lot of characteristics that we as adults also have. We inherited those characteristics from someone.
mm,
I know I'm a mixture of my mother and my father. A lot of people say that character wise, I'm a lot like my father.
mm,
So, yeah, a lot of the things I inherited, whether you teach it or not, they just naturally inherit those things. That's what I've picked up. And I guess from a spiritual side as well, that's why it's important to dedicate your child.
mm,
And as part of the dedication, what they do is they actually cut off, a lot of bad things from a spiritual side that could have
mm,
like flowed through from previous generations. So I guess that's the importance of dedicating your child as well.
mm,
And not just stopping at the dedication stage, but also, like constantly praying for your child and like cutting those things off, I guess, constantly by you praying. Yeah.
mm. So how would you involve your kind of wider church family in that kind of aspect of raising your children? Would you, when you say dedicate, do you mean dedicate to
Mhm.
a church, or when you say dedicate, do you mean kind of like just a commitment to God?
Yeah, what I mean is, so I think the Catholics call it baptism.
Mm,
But I mean, the biblical meaning of baptizing, it's impossible to baptize a child because I think the Greek or the Hebrew meaning of baptizing is to basically be immersed underwater. So
mm,
you can't like immerse a child underwater. And I mean, also in the Bible, children were dedicated. I
mm,
think somewhere in Matthew it talks about where Jesus says, "Bring the children unto me."
mm,
So based on that verse, we can see that children were not dedicated. I mean, baptized, but they were dedicated. So that's what I
mm,
mean with dedication. As a baby, you can't be baptized, but rather be dedicated. And I guess you can only be baptized once you fully understand what baptism is all about as well. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, that's really good. And I think from what I've understood with dedications, I think it can seem from the outside very much we're talking about this from a church perspective. Like
Yeah.
you might see it from a this pastor is dedicating this child to this church, but in
Yeah.
reality,
Yeah.
it's the family
Oh,
dedicating the child to God and
Jesus.
dedicating it
Yeah.
to Jesus
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
wider church family.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. And so one of the things that we, myself and Kathy, said, especially with Taylor's dedication, was, Lord, we're dedicating Taylor to you, and we only there to guide her, but she's yours. From this day onward, she's yours.
Mm,
And I guess from a parenting point of view, um, it's important to pray for wisdom to actually guide your child. Yeah, But anyway, sorry, I'm going off the point here, Laurence.
No, it's all good. I think it's a very beneficial thing to talk about, and I often
Yeah,
wonder myself how people without that kind of leaning on that aspect can even
yeah,
how they kind of have patience, you know, because we can
mm,
look to the fruits of the spirit that we're told that we're given patience
mm,
amongst other things.
yeah,
So when that patience starts to run out, we can remind ourselves that it's not us that is patient. It's like God that lives within us that is patient.
yeah,
So when we
yeah,
need that for our kids, we're able
yeah,
to lean on that. So I'm
yeah,
always amazed when I meet someone that's not actually a Christian who seems to be like
yeah,
the most patient, loving person, parent ever. I'm just like, how are you doing this?
yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
so I'm curious how you found the kind of fairly large age gap between Taylor and Aron. Like, what have been some of the challenges, or what have been some of the positives from that age gap?
Yeah, so firstly, why the big age gap? So Kathy was actually diagnosed with a condition. The doctors found that she has cysts on her ovaries,
Oh wow.
and they told her that she would never ever be able to conceive kids naturally. So, with before we had Taylor, she was actually going to the gynecologist so that he can start the treatment. And before she could start her first treatment, Kathy did a test and she saw that she was actually pregnant already. So yeah,
Wow.
she never had to go for any treatment. And I mean, with Aaron, why the big gap? Because of Kathy's condition. Both Kathy and I were never ever sure if we wanted a second child or not. But like I think 2 years ago, we both made up our minds that we're fine with just one child. I know it sounds like a cliche where a lot of people will tell you that the last born was a surprise, but in our case, it was really a surprise again
Mm,
because of Kathy's condition, that she wouldn't be able to conceive naturally.
wow.
But yeah, how do I find the big age gap? So, firstly, from a parenting point of view, very tiring because you just gone over that stage where your child becomes independent,
Mm,
where your child sleeps through, and there are certain things that they can do for themselves. You don't have to wake up early on a weekend to make them a simple thing like porridge. They can do that on their own. They can switch the TV on and just keep themselves busy at least for 2 hours. So
mm,
yeah, from a parenting point of view, definitely tiring. But the two of them get along very well. I think Taylor's a very good big sister, very protective. I thought that her impatience would also show towards Aaron, but she's actually very patient for some reason when it comes to Aaron and also very protective. Yeah.
mm,
So, yeah, I'm really proud of her, and I admire the relationship that they actually have. Yeah.
mm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's about 7 years, right? That gap.
It's 8 years.
Oh,
Yeah,
it
eight
is. Okay.
years. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But no, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear that she's showing that protection and that patience as well with him. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you feel as a dad? Like, do you view things differently in any way now versus when Taylor was a newborn and a toddler?
I must tell you, Lawrence, so Taylor had a lot more material wise. So, I mean, we had a room dedicated for Taylor, just for Taylor. There was a whole bunch of stuff that we got before Taylor was born.
Mm,
So that was the approach with Taylor. And with Aaron, it was like the total opposite. It was more like a go with the flow approach. So Aaron, yeah, I must say so. In that sense, we were a lot more prepared
mm,
for Taylor. I also think parenting wise, I think we were a bit more strict with Taylor. Strict, not just in a sense that don't do this, don't do that, but like monitoring and watching milestones.
mm,
So with Aaron, we we much more relaxed for some reason. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. That's like kind of some of the small differences that I've picked up, in terms of parenting Taylor versus parenting Aaron. Yeah,
I think, I mean, that resonates with me, and I think that would resonate even with a lot of parents with only one child. Even would kind of agree that when you have one child, you want to put some of the focus, well, you put all your focus
yeah,
onto that one child, right? But then
yeah,
when a second or third comes along, you don't have all that focus, and then the focus has to be shared. And you
yeah,
also, like you said, you're just a bit more experienced, a bit more knowledgeable, and you
yeah,
know what needs the focus and the care and the attention. And you don't need to
yeah.
buy the millions of toys that you know are going to be useful for about 3 days. And
Yeah, and I guess Taylor had her great granny that lived with, or Kathy's granny that was Taylor's great granny that lived with us. So she had Kathy's granny that looked after her constantly. Also, like investing a lot of time in Taylor. She was like really, Taylor was the apple of her eye, you know, and she was like very also invested in Taylor. She like used to spend a lot of time with Taylor's. I mean, doing things like teaching also things, aware of what milestones is she supposed to like reach. So I guess where Aaron, yeah, I don't think we had all the support that we had when we had Taylor as well. So yeah, there was a less people involved, I guess, when it came to Aaron as well.
why was that? Why were there fewer people?
Yeah, Katie's granny passed away. We also moved houses. Kathy's parents, both of them didn't work at that point in time, so we used to support them financially. So they would come through to our place, to just help us with a whole lot of things, and we would help them financially. So I guess in that sense, we had a whole lot more hands and support for Taylor. Whereas with Aaron, both my mother and father-in-law had jobs, and Kathy's granny wasn't there anymore as well. Yeah.
How was that process with your wife's grandmother? It kind of explaining that loss to Taylor, if she was so important to her growing up.
Yeah. Taylor, I think, was about maybe 3 when she passed away.
Okay.
But I remember that first month after she passed away. So Taylor didn't fully understand, a person um, passing away. Obviously, didn't understand the entire process. But yeah, I was surprised that I think it was about the first week. Taylor just started crying and saying that she misses Oma, she wants Oma, where is Oma? That's what she used to call her Oma. But I think that also spoke to the relationship they had and to Taylor's maturity at a very young age, like I told you. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah, that's a big process to go through at that age, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned there about moving house. I'm guessing that was when you were still in South Africa. So in two
Yes,
different places. Okay.
yeah.
So I wanted to get into a little bit about your move from South Africa to the Netherlands. Why did you make that choice?
Yeah, Laurence, I guess when you become a parent, you no longer think about yourself. You no longer live for yourself. That is the decision that you make on a daily basis isn't about yourself anymore, but it's purely for your kids. Yeah. So, firstly, this move was for Taylor, firstly, and I guess for Kathy and for Aaron's sake as well. But mostly for the kids' sake. That's why we made this move. And when I say the kids' sake, I'm talking about in terms of opportunities, I guess, in terms of just professional opportunities that they would have, 10, 15 years down the line. And yeah, I guess that's the short answer. We made this move thinking about their futures,
Mm.
The current situation in South Africa, I guess, is like very unpredictable, to put it lightly. Um, if South Africa continues at this trend that it's continuing now with politically, I guess the future looks extremely bleak for kids
Right.
of Taylor and Aron's age, 15 or 20 years from now.
So as a parent in that situation, you have to think, as you said, primarily about your kids
Yes,
and what the future could hold
yeah,
for them if things were to stay as they are. And even
yeah,
if you were in a happy situation yourself, it's not about
mm,
that. It's about their
correct.
future.
Yeah, correct. Kathy and I both had very stable jobs in South Africa. Kathy was on the brink of getting a promotion, actually. And I was also on the brink of getting a promotion after 8 years in this organization.
Well,
And I was like thinking to myself in this week again, I I was praying and I was saying, Lord, I hope I made the right decision because, yeah, it was we gave up a lot, coming
mm,
here. Not just from a stability point of view, but family is
mm.
something that we also value a lot, and we were a very close knitted family. I mean, we got together every Saturday and Sunday almost. Our house was always constantly full of family.
That was actually going to be one of my questions a little bit later. Was so how did your family react when you told them that you would be making the move?
I must say it was a very selfless response. Selfless in the sense that the first thing that they said was, if this is the best thing for you and your family, then you should do it.
Mm.
But yeah, on the emotional side, I must say that my mother, well, my father passed away 3 years or 4 years ago.
Sorry to hear that.
And my mother is a person that doesn't show emotions, but when you meet her, she's like this soft-speaking, gentle person. But she's not very emotional. So when I
Mm.
say not very emotional, growing up, she never used to say "I love you." She never used to say that, but she used to show it.
Mm.
And even when my father passed away, I didn't see her crying a lot. But like after we left, my sister called me, saying that, Mark, I didn't even see mommy crying this much when Papa passing away after you guys moved. And
Wow.
like, so she didn't tell me how much this move affected her, but
Mm.
yeah, I know how much it affected her.
Mm.
And same with my sister. I mean, Aaron was the first boy in my family. So that was like, everyone was like extremely excited the day that they heard it's a boy.
Mm.
Both my two brothers and my sister all have girls. So Aaron was like the first boy in our family. So yeah, they experienced the first boy for just a year. And after a year, we moved away.
So it sounds to me like your family is reacting in a similar way to the choice that you've made as a sacrifice, and they've understood that it seems that part of having a loving family is the time to sacrifice, right? And they
Yeah,
understand that this is the choice you're making.
yeah.
You said that about your sister telling you that your mother was so visibly upset. What did
Mhm.
you do with that information when you found out? Like, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, it my first response was obviously a one of questioning the whole move again.
Mm,
and thinking, is I hope that this is going to be worth it at the end. But yeah, also one where I feel like almost, what is the right word to use? But like, sorry is maybe too light of a word, but what is another word that I can use? But it broke my heart,
mm,
obviously. Yeah, that was the first response, to know that she is responding this way. Because, like I said, I know that she's not an emotional person, and to know that
yeah,
she's so emotional about us moving away, especially Aron, because my
yeah.
mom lived with us just before we moved away, by the way. But she lived with us just before we moved. So she had cancer. She was diagnosed with cancer. So that's how she moved in
Wow.
with us, because Kathy said, "No, mommy, move in with us so that we can look after you." So that's how she moved in with us. And while she was having a chemo, my sister gave her a pep talk and told her, "Mommy, you have to like pull through with this cancer because Kathy is expecting and you need to look after that baby." And yeah, she pulled through. And that's one thing that she always spoke about afterwards, to say that, you
Mm,
know what, I pulled through basically for the sake of this baby. And the Lord spared me to spend time with him. So
wow.
yeah, yeah, Lawrence. So my first reaction was one of me feeling extremely brokenhearted
Yeah.
for her. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I mean,
Mm.
there's definitely so much of God's touch over all this aspect of your story, and bringing it together, the future, I think, and all of these aspects playing a role
Mm.
as you are reacting to them, and like how it affects you must have been a real struggle. And
Yeah.
in terms of the actual moving here, can you tell us a little bit about the actual process of getting everything in order? Because from what I hear, it may not have been as straightforward as you would have liked it to have been.
Yeah, it wasn't straightforward at all. So I had to get here in a hurry. So my visa was actually expedited. So getting me from South Africa to the Netherlands took about, I would say, just under 2 months. To get Kathy and them here wasn't as straightforward as of a process. I think even if the visas were expedited, they wouldn't have been able to move to the Netherlands immediately as well, because there was a whole lot of things that we had to take care of in South Africa. So
Mm,
we sold all our possessions in South Africa, the biggest thing being our house. And yeah, the housing market is totally different in South Africa from what it is here in the Netherlands. So in South Africa, I mean, you have um, a buyer can choose from 50 houses, where here it's the opposite. There's 50 buyers for one house.
yeah.
So yeah, it was a struggle to get a buyer for our house. And I think a couple of days before Kath and I had to leave, everything was finalized. So the timing was like, perfect
Mm.
for visas when it came through, and when Kath and I had to leave for the Netherlands.
How did your family feel during that time when you were here and they were still there?
So when you say my family, are you talking about
So
Kathy and?
yeah, your Kathy and the kids.
Yeah, so it wasn't easy for both Kathy and I. Kathy definitely struggled in terms of, surprisingly, more emotionally. I thought that she would cope better emotionally with it, me not being there. But yeah, she actually struggled surprisingly. Lawrence, I still can't tell you how it affected Taylor, because Taylor, same like me, we're not good with expressing ourselves. So Taylor is a sort of child that will tell you, yeah, everything is okay. Are you fine, Taylor? And she would say yes. That would be a natural response.
Mm.
But Kathy could see in her behavior that her behavior was definitely a bit different. So I
Mm.
think she also definitely missed me. And yeah, the other day, Kathy said, you know what, both of us are constantly tired, but she said she would rather deal with the tiredness instead of the missing of us being apart, her
Yeah.
missing me. Yeah, because this side we obviously have a whole lot less help than what we had in South Africa. So yeah.
Mm. So, but it's good to take that time to reflect, right, and to appreciate those positives out of it for sure.
Yeah, and I must be honest. I guess the time apart also gave me time to reflect on my parenting style, especially when it comes to Taylor. I must be honest, Lawrence. So Taylor and I are a lot the same. So there's a lot of times where we clash, and that's because we are so the same. There's a lot of times that we actually clash. So while we were apart, I could actually like reflect on all those things.
Yeah.
And one thing that I asked and prayed for was, Lord, just give me more patience with Taylor, because I can see a lot of myself in Taylor. And I guess
Mm.
that's why we clash so much.
So we were just talking about how you and your wife and kids were feeling during that process of you being in the Netherlands
Mm,
before they arrived. Um,
mm.
so they then eventually did arrive. How are all of you settling to the new country?
Yeah, I must say from my side, I couldn't believe it, but I got used to the fact that I loved alone very quick. So it was a bit of a readjustment from my side again,
Yeah.
getting used to the noise, getting used to the mess every single hour of the day, having to tidy up here, tidy up there. But Kathy told me, Mark, uh, we can go back to South Africa if you want the clean house. So yeah, so I guess I had to readjust
Mm.
again in that sense. How did they adjust? I think at first it was excitement. I guess that's natural. The excitement of being in a new country, experiencing new things, new way of living.
Mm.
Yeah, excitement. But once the reality kicked in, I think especially from Kathy and from both Kathy and I, we could see that there's definitely pros and cons, of being here.
Mm.
But I guess at the end of the day, we have to decide what is a deal breaker, if I can call it that, for us that would make us move back to South Africa. I think the pros definitely outweighs the cons being here. And the biggest pros, like I said, in terms of safety for my kids, and the freedom that my kids will hopefully experience as well,
Mm.
just being not having to be overly cautious. Yeah, still cautious,
Mm.
a simple thing like going to the shop or going to the school. And yeah, one day when they're young, going out or attending university, if things do stay the same, simple things like that. I mean, that sense of freedom, outweighs all the other things for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It it must be challenging to think in that kind of pro con mindset when the primary reason
yeah,
for you guys to move was something in the
mm,
future, right? So that's you move and
correct.
then you
Yeah,
experience all these things, but your main reason for
yeah,
moving you haven't really got to experience yet because that's kind of
yes,
much further down the
yes.
line.
So, yeah, that's exactly what I told someone, I think today or yesterday. I told him, it's like you working on this project, in my line of work, I work on IT projects, but this is like working on an IT project that's going to go live in 15 years from
Yeah.
now. So I'll only see the actual results 15 years from now.
Well, you said to me before we started recording that you've always had a mindset is to take things as it comes, to kind of
Yes.
just go with the flow mentality.
Yeah.
So for this change, there must have been quite a kind of friction within your kind of like way of approaching life.
Correct, Laurence. And like I must say, the time apart as well made me question this move. You
Mm,
know, on days where I got emotional, missing them, the natural me making decisions quick would have like, if this was all about me, I would have made the decision and tell Kathy, look, I don't think this was the right decision. Let's just stay in South Africa, you know, and let's just scan this whole move to the Netherlands. But like, yeah, that's one thing that I constantly need to like remind myself that it's not about me, this is about
mm,
them. And this is not something, the results we won't see now, but 15 years down the line, we will hopefully, with God's grace, all appreciate the move that we made here.
yeah. Some of my final questions are kind of just about if you would have advice for other dads or other parents out there, specifically because you've been through such a journey with this move. I think it's a process that not a lot of people will really know too much about. If there is anyone out
Mm.
there that's thinking they want to make a big move for the future of their family, like what would you say to that person? Like what advice would you have for yourself maybe like a year ago when you were first thinking about a big decision like this?
One thing that I can say is I underestimated the magnitude of this move. And that is because of, like I said, my personality of like making decisions, quick
Mm,
decisions, because I don't like to think too far ahead, you
mm,
know. I would definitely say think through every aspect of your move. How will it affect each and every person?
mm,
So I can see that it affects us all differently. And that is because we all have different personalities.
mm,
Like I'm extremely. I grew up very close in a close knitted family where Kathy didn't grow up in a family that was so closely knitted. So I can say I definitely miss family more than what Kathy does.
mm,
And that is because we are different. And I can see that with Taylor as well. Taylor misses family, a cousin, my sister's daughter,
mm.
and she misses her old school, her old friends as well.
Yeah.
Taylor is a very social person, and Kathy says that we are the same in that sense. But I don't see myself as a social person. I see myself as an borderline introvert, extrovert, but more of an introvert. But I think that's something that Taylor really values family and friends. So she definitely misses her friends.
Mm,
Well, Aron is, I guess, too young to understand the difference. Yeah.
yeah.
But I would say definitely think how it's going to affect each and every person in your household because it
Mm,
will affect each and every person differently. And Mike, someone told me this when we lived in Australia for 14 months, and someone told me this, and I guess this is what it all boils down to. He told me, Mark, tonight when you get home, do a spreadsheet of pros and cons, a column for pros and cons. And he told me, just make a non-emotional decision about going back to South Africa or staying in Australia. He said, put a list of pros staying in Australia. I would say a list now of pros staying here in the Netherlands
mm,
and do a list of pros staying in South Africa. Do the same, cons staying in Netherlands, cons staying in South Africa. And if that list of pros also outweighs the cons, then I guess you can make a non-emotional decision based on what you've seen. So yeah, I guess that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Making a non-emotional decision. Yeah.
Yeah. No, thinking with your head, that's good. Thinking through those decisions, I think having like a younger family with two small kids when we're making that move across countries, we obviously did think about it for a little bit. We thought about how they would
Mm,
react, but obviously, at the time we had a 2-year-old and a baby before he turned one,
mm,
so we're not really sure how they're going to react to certain things. But I think,
mm.
like you said, think about each person individually, how they're going to react, and that obviously will then help inform you of things that you might need to put in place after the big
Yeah.
decision's made, right? Like you've
Yeah.
identified
Mm,
that family is more important, like so important to you and your daughter.
mm,
So maybe things are put in place to maintain those relationships because you've
mm.
identified that at the right time
Yeah.
rather than it being after it's all happened. And so I think
Mm.
that's a good step to make. My final question, the thing that I kind of want to ask every dad that I talk to, would you have any advice for a very new dad, someone that's like got a newborn at home or thinking back to when you had Taylor as a newborn? What piece of sage advice do you think you would give to someone in that situation of having their newborn?
I think you should definitely embrace those times
Mm,
because there's certain things that goes by so quick, and this is what everyone used to tell me. When Taylor was so young, they said before you know it, she'll be a teenager.
mm,
So I will definitely say embrace each and every phase or stage of their lives
mm,
and prioritize your family. I think for us as God-fearing slash Christians, the order should be God first, family second, and then everything else.
yeah.
So definitely uh, put them above your job or anything else that's below God.
Mm.
So yeah, that's the piece of advice that I would give a young person, a young parent.
Awesome. I appreciate it so much, Mark, all that you've shared with us today. Your story, I think, is a real special one, and I think you can kind of really hold a lot of heart within your story in terms of where God's bringing you and your family. You,
Mhm.
I'm sure you feel like you're still in the midst of that journey, you're still in the middle of that story.
Yeah, yeah,
But I think what you shared with us today, I think it will be quite impactful for some people that are maybe having similar feelings and maybe don't know quite how to process some of these things. So I really appreciate you
yeah.
opening up with us today.
And if there's just one thing that from my side, if you ask me the question, what is the most important thing for me that I would want my kids to take from me, because they say children don't listen to what you or they don't do as you say, but they
Mm,
do as you do. So that's one of the reasons why I like try and lead by example,
mm,
especially when it comes to serving the Lord. You know, and the reason why I try and do that, yeah, maybe not as well as what I'm supposed to, is because that's the one thing that I told Taylor. Taylor, I'm going to give you a lot of advice growing up, but I keep on reiterating this to her. I said, Taylor, but the one thing that you should always do is always serve the Lord with your all. Serve Him with your all and dedicate your life to Him. I said because I won't be here all the time, but the one presence or person that will remain with you all the days of your lives, all the days of your life is the Lord.
mm,
So that's the one thing that I would want to instill into my kids, and that is the one thing that I will feel like I've done well as a parent when both my kids like serve the Lord with their whole hearts.
mm.
Yeah,
Well, I think having that as a focus as well can just help with so many of the other things that we can spend however much time talking about patience
yeah,
or other characteristics. But if we
yeah,
put that thing first, serving the Lord, if we do prioritize that, then everything else will be given to us.
Amen.
And we know that. Thank you so much, Mark, again for joining us.
My pleasure.
And there we have another Dad Dialogue conversation. I want to extend a huge thank you to Mark for coming on the show, sharing his journey with us. I found his story fascinating, all the little different decision points he and his wife have had to make over the years, and hearing that first-hand experience of difference between raising a boy and a girl, I thought was very interesting. So again, if you would like to come on the show yourself, register your interest over at daddialogue.co.uk, follow us on all the social media places. I hope to see you again soon for another Dad Dialogue conversation. Have a good day. Goodbye.